You know the feeling, right? That intense, pull-your-hair-out frustration of hitting a total brick wall with your weight loss. You're putting in the work, but the scale, it just flat-out refuses to budge. Well, today, we're putting on our medical detective hats to figure out exactly why this happens, strictly following the clinical evidence.
So, you're doing everything right, but you still can't lose weight? Look, let me just stop you right there and validate exactly what you're feeling. A scale that won't move is not a failure of your willpower. As we're going to see in the literature today, it's a highly complex biological response. Your body is just incredibly adaptive, and sometimes the routines that crushed it for you on day 1, well, they just stop working by day 60.
To get to the absolute bottom of this, we've structured this explainer into 6 quick chapters. 1. The weight loss plateau. 2. Stress, sleep, and cortisol. 3. Metabolism and starvation mode. 4. Hidden deficiencies and conditions. 5. Strategies to break plateaus. And 6. Your individualized path forward. Let's get into it.
Chapter 1. The weight loss plateau.
When we talk about plateaus clinically, they are incredibly multifactorial. Fundamentally, as the literature points out, obesity is a disorder of excess energy accumulation. So weight loss absolutely requires fewer calories entering fat tissue than leaving it. Right, that's your classic calories in, calories out concept. All diets, whether they're controlling your portions directly or maybe reducing your appetite naturally, they fundamentally work by causing this reduction in calorie intake. But, as you've definitely experienced, just eating less doesn't work forever. Moving right along to Chapter 2, Stress, Sleep, and Cortisol. Now this is exactly where the simple math of calories gets completely interrupted by your biology. Let's look at this definition word for word. Cortisol is a hormone produced by your adrenal glands that helps your body respond to stress, regulate metabolism, and reduce inflammation. Now, while it's totally vital for survival, when stress becomes chronic, that cortisol just stays elevated. And chronically high cortisol actively cranks up your appetite, especially for those high-calorie, sugary foods. It breaks down muscle tissue, which tanks your metabolism, and it completely impairs your insulin sensitivity. All of this strongly promotes visceral fat storage, creating what we commonly call a cortisol belly. But wait, we really need to make a super clear clinical distinction right here. High cortisol from stress is typically triggered by lifestyle factors, emotional stress or sleep deprivation, and importantly, it's reversible. This is very, very different from hypercortisolism, which is also known as Cushing's syndrome. Now, Cushing's is a serious medical condition, often caused by a tumor in the pituitary or adrenal glands, or sometimes by long-term steroid use. If you're experiencing things like severe muscle weakness, purple stretch marks, or rapid fat accumulation specifically on the back of your neck, that's not just stress. That requires an immediate medical consultation.
Okay, so if you are dealing with just the lifestyle-induced high cortisol, the evidence points us to 5 key interventions. First, focus on daily movement like walking or yoga. Honestly, it's kind of ironic, but overtraining with too much high-intensity exercise can actually raise your cortisol. Second, mix in strength training 2 to 3 times a week. Third, prioritize rest days for recovery. Fourth, practice intentional stress reduction like meditation or deep breathing. And fifth, aim for 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep.
And speaking of sleep, the clinical findings here are just fascinating. Sleep deprivation doesn't just make you feel groggy, it actually spikes cortisol and completely messes with your hunger hormones. In fact, in one randomized clinical trial, researchers found that simply extending sleep to 8.5 hours in real-life settings actually reduced total energy and sodium intake, and it significantly improved overall diet quality. Sleep is literally the time when your body resets its metabolic baseline.
All right, Chapter 3, Metabolism and Starvation Mode.
As your body dynamically defends its fat stores, your energy expenditure completely changes. A massive, often totally overlooked piece of this puzzle is NEAT. Let's read the definition word to word. NEAT stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis, the number of calories burned fidgeting, changing posture, and performing subconscious daily movements. So when you're in a caloric deficit, your body actually subconsciously reduces your NEAT to save energy. You literally stop fidgeting, you just sit more. Promoting and actually being aware of your daily need is absolutely crucial to keeping your metabolism active.
Which brings us to the big contrast between a standard caloric deficit and starvation mode. A standard deficit creates a predictable metabolic energy expenditure for weight loss. But if that deficit is too aggressive for too long, your body flips the switch into starvation mode. This is a highly evolved physiological response where your metabolic adaptation drastically halts fat loss to protect you from what it thinks is a famine. It's wild, but in our modern environment, this survival mechanism actually does way more harm than good, just slamming the brakes on your weight loss journey.
Next up, Chapter 4, Hidden Deficiencies and Conditions.
You know, sometimes a plateau is actually a giant red flag for an underlying medical condition. Take lipedema, for example. Let's define it word to word. A chronic, progressive disorder of adipose tissue, characterized by a disproportionate, painful accumulation of fat, often in the lower body. It's so vital to know that standard BMI metrics are completely insufficient for diagnosing this. Pain in the fat tissue is the absolute hallmark symptom. If diet and exercise aren't touching the fat in your legs and hips, and they're tender to the touch, you really need to speak with a physician about lipedema. And on top of that, hidden nutrient deficiencies can also just totally stall your progress. A lack of vitamin D, magnesium, iodine, or iron can severely impact your metabolic and thyroid functions. You can definitely address these through dietary approaches, like loading up on dark leafy greens for magnesium or seaweed for iodine, alongside some very specific clinical supplementation. Honestly, if your weight is stalled out, requesting comprehensive blood work to check these exact nutrient levels is a highly evidence-based next step.
Okay, Chapter 5, Strategies to Break Plateaus. So how do we actually fix this? Well, the clinical literature lays out a really precise 3-step intervention protocol. Step 1 is the initial assessment, correcting those nutrient deficiencies we just talked about, increasing your NEAT, and fixing your sleep. Now, if that doesn't work, you move to Step 2, advanced dietary approaches. These include specific therapeutic diets and intermittent calorie restrictions. And finally, if the plateau still persists and your health is at risk, Step 3 explores surgical or pharmacological options like GLP-1 medications or bariatric surgery, all under strict medical guidance.
Under that second step of advanced approaches, we find this incredibly fascinating tool called a diet refeed. Let's read this word to word. A diet refeed is a temporary overfeeding phase during which calorie intake is increased marginally over maintenance levels, primarily through carbohydrates. By taking a diet break or practicing intermittent calorie restriction, you're actually replenishing your glycogen reserves, alleviating physiological stress, and essentially signaling to your body, hey, the famine is over. This can be a total game changer for rebooting your metabolism.
Another advanced tool we see in the literature is the Very Low Calorie Diet, or VLCD. These diets provide less than 800 kilocalories per day. But listen to me, they absolutely must be done under strict medical supervision. They require incredibly careful macronutrient balancing, often pushing your protein way up, to ensure that while you're rapidly losing fat, you are preserving your crucial lean muscle mass.
And really, extensive peer-reviewed literature synthesized in systematic evaluations strongly supports that we just can't rely on diet alone. The absolute best cardiometabolic outcomes happen when these advanced dietary changes are combined with both aerobic training and, critically, resistance training. Building muscle is literally your best defense against a slowing metabolism.
Which brings us to our final chapter, Chapter 6, Your Individualized Path Forward.
To synthesize all this dense medical evidence into some actual, actionable steps for you, overcoming a plateau requires a multifaceted, highly individualized medical approach. It's just not about eating less. You should seriously consider requesting comprehensive blood work to check your nutrients and thyroid. Try aligning your meals with your circadian rhythms. Cutting out that late-night snacking. Make sure you integrate resistance training right alongside boosting your daily NEAT. Practice intentional stress reduction to manage that cortisol. And remember, absolutely never attempt very low-calorie diets without professional supervision. Wow, we have covered a ton of ground today, peeling back the layers of human biology to understand that a stubborn scale is really just your body trying to communicate with you, not fight you. Knowing that a weight plateau is a complex biological response rather than a lack of effort, how will you individualize your own health journey today? Take a good look at your sleep, your stress, and your daily movement.
If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another science-backed fitness video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.